Thank you, my AV in the front row. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the BetaKit Town Hall. My name is Asaria. I'm the new CEO of BetaKit, and it's amazing to see you all here tonight. Just a quick note that we are recording tonight's event. We're going to be sharing that tomorrow so you can share with your networks and your friends. Scott Galloway said recently that the most important skill that he thinks young people should learn is storytelling. There's probably some engineers in this room who disagree, but I'm going to tell you why I think he's right. Storytelling is essential to our lives and to our careers. The stories we tell to ourselves and to each other impact how we're seen, what we can sell, and the level of our own success. We tell a story through the products we offer to our customers, the way we manage our teams, the things we post on social media, the positions we take, the things we ask for, and the aspirations that we set. Storytelling is essential to our success as people, as leaders, as companies, as a sector, and as a country. At BetaKit, storytelling is what we do. We tell the stories of Canadian tech and innovation for an audience made up of the people who are building, funding, and supporting Canadian tech and innovation. Through our work, we aspire to inform, to interrogate, and to connect. And that's why we brought you all together tonight. What is the story of Canadian tech right now? Is it the story of decline, of conflict, of challenges, of disillusionment, of exodus? Is it a story about how hard it is to build things, how hard it is to find a place to live, how hard it is to make ends meet, how hard it is to hire? Or is it a story of accomplishment, of ambition, of problem solving, and of growth? The best stories, like the best companies, manage the inherent tension between problem and solution. Tonight in this room, we have people who have a role to play in the story of Canadian tech and where that story goes. We have people in this room behind some of our biggest companies, behind some of our most innovative products. We have almost every major Canadian VC, the heads of all the community organizations, innovation centers, universities, financial institutions, and a lot of promising young minds. Every single person in here gets to decide what the story is that they're going to tell them to themselves, to their networks, to their government, to their employees, to their friends, and to their kids. Our role at BetaKit is to surface the information and the perspectives that will help inform that work, your thinking, your story, both individually and collectively. We're here to connect you and to connect some of the dots. We're here to surface information about the barriers you face and give you the opportunity to come together to discuss the next chapter of Canadian tech. To help you do that, we're proud to be hosting a conversation with BetaKit Chair Satish Kanwar and Shopify CEO Toby Luque. Through that conversation, which is going to happen in just a little while, you're going to get some insights into the thinking of one of Canada's most influential leaders. We're going to have a Slido up here when they start talking where you can post your questions for the AMA. So start thinking about what you want to ask. But first, we're going to ask some questions that will give a sense of what the sector is facing at this particular moment in time. BetaKit editor Douglas Soltis is going to put some questions to people operating from different vantage points in Canadian tech. Our guests have different areas of focus. They're in different stages of their companies and their careers. We have an early stage founder who's trying to apply the promise of technology to the challenges of an overburdened medical system. We have a later stage founder and CTO who's working to grow a global AI powerhouse from a Canadian foundation. We have a 3-time founder who's contemplating the responsibilities of tech leadership beyond just an exit. And we have a student who's coming into this world and looking to many of you in this room for inspiration as she embraces the sector as a pathway to address many of the challenges that her generation needs to face. Like all of you, they have ideas and issues that are top of mind for them. And we're going to ask them what they think so it can help inform what you think. I'm going to bring them to the stage now, and I want you just to hold your applause until they're all out here. First up, we have Joella Almeida, the CEO and co-founder of MedEssist, a complete digital health platform for pharmacies. We have Ivan Zhang, the co-founder of Cohere, the leading AI platform for enterprise. We have Asaria, the founder of Transformer Lab, Well.ca, and Tulip Retail, where he was the CEO until 2023. And we have Jocelyne Murphy, who recently moved to Toronto from Waterloo, where she grew up and went to university, and who moved here to continue building her startup, Wygo, which she founded to address the loneliness epidemic. And now let's have a round of applause for them and for BetaKit Editor-in-Chief Douglas Soltis.
I nailed it. We did a lot of seat tests before you guys came into the room. Okay, so this is not a panel. This is us speed running as many perspectives as we can to set the stage for the rest of the conversations that'll be happening later this evening. So I am going to do my best to give as much airspace to these people to give their perspective on what they're seeing. Joelle, I want to start with you. Hi. I'm going to slide out a little bit so I can see you. The reason why we want to start with you, and there was 3 meetings where this was discussed, because you have previously compared your founder journey to that of a Batman villain. And I would like you to kick this off by sharing how you're feeling right now as the founder of MedEssist with this audience.
Thank you. So where that comes from is everyone's watched Batman and has seen the part where Bane is beating Batman up and says, "You've adopted the darkness, but I was born in it." When I went to Raise in 2022, I would tell a lot of investors, well, everyone's learning how to be profitable now and learning how to build a good business and being given all of these resources. And I had a tiny team working at the back of a pharmacy with the garbage right next to me, and I was born in this. Like, this is I've been born in like the worst part of having to build a company. I would go door to door at 7 in the morning, come home at 11 p.m. at night. Anything that you could imagine happening in the worst way possible has happened to us. So, like, I've been through all of it. There's no more darker place I can go anymore. And so that's where that came from.
Health tech rises. Okay, I get that. But despite that, you scaled a bit. You were once servicing 500,000 patients across Canada through your platform with a staff of 5, which, given the amount of volunteer staff that we had to support us to pull this together, like, you are doing very impressive work. MedEssist is now a team of over 20, 21 now, I think. What are the biggest, I don't want to call them maybe barriers, but what are the things that you're looking to leap over when it comes to continuing to scale your business?
So we were a staff of 5 because I really didn't have time to raise. Like, we were serving the healthcare market at a time when everyone needed us. I think peak pandemic, booking is very sexy, but anyone that's taken a programming class, like, that's one of the first things you learn how to do is like how to build a booking software or scheduling software. That was not the problem we were solving with healthcare. We were really solving a supply chain issue. I love to educate people that in Canada, healthcare is federal, but provincially distributed. And so the problems you have to solve in healthcare are very provincially nuanced. And that's very similar to the States. State by state, healthcare is very different. And I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. Now, as we're, looking at the outcomes of what's happening in Canada, I have to take stock of the fact that I can't pay as competitively as US companies. I don't think that's like a secret. But it makes it a little harder, and it definitely makes it harder for me to hire, and reward people in the way that I want to reward them.
And so the unspoken thing here, if you guys want to, well, I guess this is a dry event, but if you wanted to play a drinking game in your head, like, part of what you're referring to is the capital gains tax changes being an extra barrier to that.
It's a little bit, yeah. It's not, again, I'm used to the pile of shit, so this is okay. It's all right. I'll solve it. That's my job. But it's not fun. It's not nice.
Okay, let's talk about something that's super fun, which is procurement. Hey, we're starting off with health tech. There's a reason. Because your company has been described as the Shopify for pharmacies, but you don't really like that. Because you fundamentally have a different relationship between the buyers and the beneficiaries of your platform, because there's this government relationship, right? Talk to me about how you get in there and sell, and why provincial systems powered by U.S. platforms and Canadian buyers, as you put it on our prep call, is such a pain in the ass.
First of all, I'm sorry. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, like I said, in Canada, healthcare is federally procured but distributed provincially. And for me, that puts us in a very niche space. We are solving a problem that's a healthcare challenge and a small business challenge. If I was just a healthcare company, maybe I wouldn't exist. Maybe my company wouldn't exist at all. But because it's healthcare and pharmacies are small businesses, and there's a pharmacy on every block in Canada, on every block in the US, on every block in the world, I'm in a very interesting point in history, and it makes it twice as hard. But because of that, I want to be the front door to patients. Easiest way to be the front door to patients is to build what I'm building. Not just scheduling, but clinical, practical documentation, clinical, practical solutions, workflow tools, marketing, business solutions, all in one, so that pharmacies can actually do their job and take part in the healthcare system in the massive way that we've seen them do since the pandemic happened.
Okay. So, and there has been conversation amongst the ecosystem. I know there are some people that still fire off tweets, even though the platform doesn't exist, talking about moving to the States. It could be easier for some companies to maybe move there, step away from these barriers, and have a product or service that goes across North America. You're trying to help Canadians with their healthcare, so that's not really a thing that you can easily do. For the people in the room, what would level the playing field for you? What would make it easier for you to get out of the darkness?
I think we need some, I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need maybe better solutions around procurement, because healthcare, for example, let doctors, let physicians, practitioners, nurses, pharmacists, let them buy software for themselves. Stop treating them like the waitressing staff of the healthcare industry, which is what you're treating them like right now. This is what Canada is doing right now. We're treating them like they mean nothing, like their opinions mean nothing. You're telling them, here's this thing I've bought you, good luck, take care. And it sucks for them. Like, there is so much staff burnout in the healthcare system right now. People are leaving the industry in droves and numbers. 6.5 million Canadians don't have a primary care provider or a family doctor. In British Columbia, which is the province with the worst ratio of physicians to patients, by the way, 300,000 patients were served by pharmacies for contraception and minor ailments. I am focused on bringing that to Ontario, Manitoba, Alberta, wherever they need it. Like, that is the stuff that's on my mind. It's not capital gains tax. It's not, all of these other things that I'm being thrown. Like, that's just one more lump on the pile that I have to deal with, sure. But like, I think we need to give the procurement decisions to the practitioners that are using it. Let them have an opinion on what they get to use.
Thank you, Joella. I don't have answers for you, but I can maybe help draw correlations. Could you pass the microphone to Ivan, and we'll connect the dots here?
Hello.
Hi, Ivan. I'm gonna keep just wiggling over till I can see all my panelists. So you currently, reportedly, air quotes, are raising like $500 million at a $5 billion valuation. That sounds pretty tasty. But it seems like you have the same fundamental hurdles or things you have to keep track of as Joella does at an early stage, right? Like, talent and sales. In the pre-call, you were talking about how difficult it is to keep talent here, and now we're going to the AI intersection. Could you just share your perspective on what's making that difficult, or what you have to do to keep talent here despite being one of our fastest scaling companies at the current moment?
Yeah. So I do want to say that Canada is exceptional at picking the winners early. But if you look at a person's career as a funnel, after the top of funnel, there's a sharp drop in retention. And this is due to many factors, right? Like if you're an early engineer, it's hard to find ambitious projects or even senior mentorship in Canada to learn from. And if you're an ambitious entrepreneur, it's really difficult to find ambitious VC dollars or even customers, not just to get revenue from, but to get product feedback from, right?
Do Canadian customers not pick winners early as you'd like?
Yeah, so for whatever reason, and maybe it's like the little sibling syndrome or something, but it's really hard to have your first customer be Canadian. If you're building a startup right now in Canada, I bet you your first customer is not Canadian. It's probably some firm taking a risk, taking a bet on you from the States, right? And there's a huge disadvantage to that. Not only are we missing the revenue piece from Canadians, but also the product feedback, right? Like it's insane to have your customer literally across the street, and you can just go across Adelaide and help them debug whatever issue they have. And that's a valuable thing that we don't have in Canada. So that's driving entrepreneurs away, I think.
Okay, so given that though, so you are reportedly fundraising. That's not the focus, but I want to talk about you're an AI company. You have fundamental requirements in capital, compute, and talent that just can't be faked, right? Do you think you can achieve the global scale you're looking for here in Canada? Or are you handicapping yourself right now? Is Cohere handicapped because it's trying to stay in Canada?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're handicapped. I think being in Canada does give you certain advantages, and if we're a worthwhile company to have around, we would play to these advantages, right? And so for us, we know there's really, really strong, early stage talent here, right? At some point in time, let's not forget, most of the heads of AI at all these, AI companies were just Toronto mans who came from U of T, right? Like they were studying under Jeff Hinton, and then they went to create tons and tons of value in the Valley. And so for us, our advantage is capitalizing on being a place where early talent can come and work on ambitious projects, right? And they can get paid a competitive salary, et cetera, et cetera. So, I wouldn't victimize Cohere to say we're handicapped in some way. It's just there's different advantages that we can play into, and where there are gaps in the Canadian ecosystem, we've learned to just open offices elsewhere, right?
We also know if you read the Financial Post story on NVIDIA and their secret weapon, you realize it's also Toronto women's as well as men's. But I don't want to handicap you. Okay, but I am going to give you the A/B test here. I have two questions that are of a regulatory political bent, and I'm gonna list them out, and I'll let you choose the one that you want to speak to the most. My first question is, with this in mind, do you think any of that 2.4 billion promised in the budget for AI companies is going to help Cohere in any way or fuel your competitors? Or do you want to give us any commentary on the ADA provision in Bill C-27, which is supposed to build a framework to allow Canadian AI companies to scale while protecting the rest of us from the bumps in the roads at scale? Would you like to talk about the ungodly amount of funding that has been promised by our government, or the regulatory environment that you have to build in after that?
I can give an answer that generally covers this realm of questioning. So look, I think anytime a founder working on AI business or an AI engineer is considering starting their careers in Canada or elsewhere, there's a big pros and cons list, right? Maybe they have family here. Maybe they like the weather here or something.
It's a beautiful day to have a town hall, isn't it, everybody?
But I think it's our job as an ecosystem, and not just government, not just VC, but also growth companies, enterprise, community builders. It's our job to increase that pros list as much as possible, right? Because right now it's very hard to stay in Canada, if you want to be the best in the world at something, we need to fix that.
I really appreciate you taking our red eye back today to be here for this conversation, man. Thank you. Could you pass the microphone to Ali, or we can just like hand it down? Okay, you, sir. I have a bone to pick with you because you just recently launched your third company, and I'm wondering what you're thinking. But maybe more like in a more useful framing. How does founding a net new company in 2024 feel relative to your previous two journeys, tours of duty?
It's a good question. So, when I started my first company, it was like 2007, and I started Tulip, my second company, literally 24 hours after, and so I didn't even have like a moment to think. And so this time I got to be a little bit more thoughtful, and
you gave yourself like 2 weeks between the
I
announcement
gave
and
myself
starting
a
a new
couple
company.
weeks. And like the big thing that changed for me, and I don't know if you can even see it in my face, right? Is like people have noticed I look different, and it's because I'm hanging out with people that I didn't used to hang out with before. And so I spent so much of my career just hanging out with startups who wanted to raise their next round of capital, and then they would tell me their valuation, and in my head I was like, that's my benchmark. I need to raise that much money too. And now I started hanging out with people. There's a guy in the room that I just had lunch with named Tyler who sold his company recently, and he's a happy guy. And now I'm jealous of that, right? Like I want my kids to love me the way his kids love him. And so like everybody's talking about like the challenge of building a Canadian startup and also winning. And I also want to build a company bigger than NVIDIA plus Apple plus Google combined. But like I also want like my kids to like think I'm an awesome dad and like be a good Canadian. And like I think I have like the starting of that formula, but it's fun.
As you were saying, as I realized that in all the years that we've been covering your various companies, every photo of you that has been published to BetaKit has never had one of you smiling. It's always been like the classic Ali like scowl. I'm a serious founder. Okay, this is serious because you are very gracious with your time and speaking to us from a variety of perspectives. You have notably been apart from those publicly vocal in calling for changes to the capital gains tax increase and just like the general over itness that came about minutes after the budget dropped and people were able to read it. So a lot of those people are in this room right now. Can you share your perspective with them on how you feel about this? And if you want to do it for indexing for happiness and time with family and Canadian living as well.
So I'll tell you a story. So I had the honor of selling my first company, and the exit happened. The wires are checked. The wire gets transferred, and you meet with your accountants, and you have to quickly plan how to allocate, right? And they told me, they're like, okay, first of all, you know about the capital gains exemption. And I was like, yeah, I know. Everybody gets $500,000 lifetime capital gains exemption. Cool, I'll take that. And they're like, no, there's that. And then 50% of your proceeds also get set aside. You only pay on the other half. And I was like, oh, yeah. I knew that. I had no idea, right? I started a company. I went to exit. I had no idea that you only pay like tax on half of that. And
every founder below the A level didn't laugh at that joke because they're secretly wondering if they should be talking to their accountants right now.
Look, so part of it, I'm partly biased because I can imagine when I started my first company, I wasn't thinking about what percentage of the capital gains was going to be exempted from tax. And to be honest, I felt a little guilty when I actually found out. But I think there's a bigger story. And like, I've been part of this community for like 25 years, this entrepreneurial tech community. And I've never seen the community come together in such cohesion. Like the signatures on that petition, like the articles that came out every day, like to the lobbyists behind that, like paycheck earned. But in the process of doing that, like I think 94% of the people in this room are like on the side of like kill the change, right? Like we don't want we don't want any change to the capital gains exemption. But when you see the survey of Canadians, the greater majority of Canadians support the change, and that's across party lines, across ages, across urban and rural. And so I think the part that the Tech Entrepreneurial Committee might not be knowing is that in our coordinated effort to say we're all against this thing, we also presented ourselves like we look like we're in a bubble, and that we're not understanding what's happening to the average Canadian and how they're feeling about what's happening in their lives and their grocery bills. And so, we came together for the first time in the strongest way I've ever seen us do, but we only did it on this one thing that seemed so self-serving. I don't know if we all know how people perceive us when we act this way and we don't say anything about anything else. And so I just think there's an opportunity for us to talk about issues that are more important. Right?
Like open banking. I agree. That's great. I would maybe challenge that this is the only thing that this ecosystem is coming together on, but it's been the only thing in a minute, and I take that as noted. What would help you build your third company right now?
So look, you know, like I don't want to sound like overly like I have the honor now, you know, having run 3 companies where literally when I announced I was leaving my last company, a VC flew from San Francisco and said, "Can I wire you a check for your next thing?" I was like, "Do you want to see a pitch deck?" And he was like, "No, it's cool."
Repeat founders, that's cool.
Yeah. So I can raise capital. I know how to build a team. I know how to sell. And so I don't need a lot of the things that I remember asking for when I started my first 2 companies. But you know what I want to do is like I still have in this room have this entrepreneurial ambition, which isn't just I want to build a big company, but like I want to tear down all the old companies too. I want to build the next Rogers. I want to build the next Loblaws. I want Galen to be like so sorry for what he did. And I can't do that in this regulatory environment. And so the best thing that this country could do for me is like get out of my way and change the way the competitive environment is here so we can rebuild this country and tear down the old guard.
I know you've been, yeah, that's what we're doing. I know you've been getting a lot of DMs telling you to check what you're willing to say. So I appreciate you coming here and saying.
I got called a communist for the first time in my life.
But you saying it with a smile, I really appreciate that. Could you pass the mic one to your left, sir? Awesome. Okay. All right, Jocelyne, you just heard all of that. And outside of this bubble, the world is on fire. Coming into,
questions.
yeah, like let's start with the easy ones. We're articulating a variety of perspectives at a variety of stages of experience, development, scale. Coming into this, how do you feel about the moment?
Yeah, so I think something that we talked a lot about in 2020 was, you know, the kids, what's going to happen to the kids? And I was part of the class of 2020. I graduated in the pandemic. I started at the University of Waterloo during the pandemic. I spent my first 2 years of school in a pandemic. I started my first jobs in a pandemic. All of these experiences were very lonely. Very lonely. And I'm sure all of us have felt that, and we've seen our kids feel that. Not my kids. I do not have children, for the record. But I know that people are seeing this in their own kids as well. And the loneliness, I think, once the pandemic restrictions started to lift, we expected things to go back to the way that they used to be. We expected to go to offices where there were people there, and we expected to form relationships, but we didn't expect that habits would have been formed in these times, and our social muscles would have atrophied, and people would have moved out of the cities that they used to live in. And my experiences coming into the tech industry, both as a software developer, trying to get into founding something in entrepreneurship, has been that it's kind of like talking to an empty room. I go into the office because I want the chance to maybe be mentored by somebody, and there's really not anybody there. And I think the biggest thing that we're looking for is if you're excited to have young people in Canada and you want us to stay, leaning there and being there and showing up for us. It's kind of like when you have like a dance recital or you're at a baseball game and you see your parents in the audience cheering for you. It really means something for you to be visible for us, and for us to be able to have that mentorship and make this the best social environment for young people to start a career could be one of the biggest things I think that we could use from Canadians who have been here before.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And it's what we're trying to do here, right?
Yes, this event has been such a testament to people's willingness and readiness to lean in and be here for us, and I think it's been really heartening to see that.
We're like 15 minutes in, so we're gonna get back. Okay, that being said, so much of the conversation that we just had about the state of affairs it boils down to money, right? Like where it's going, who should have it, how it's spent. Would you like to share some of your lived experience in relation to maybe where the focus is relative to like what you have to deal with on the day-to-day, trying to get a job, trying to find something, trying to find people to talk to, I guess?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing that I've been trying to instill within like my cohort and what I've been trying to build personally is confidence. We've been doing this through facilitating a bunch of creative communities. One of the examples that I've been significantly part of is called Socratica. We meet. Oh, my goodness! Just the name gets applause now. That's so exciting. But essentially, what we do is we meet every Sunday morning. And we have co-working sessions where people come and they can work on their high-effort passion projects. They have the opportunity to demo at the end. They get people to clap at them. And they show each other projects that typically they'd be a little bit too insecure to share. And it can't be their job and it can't be school. It has to be something they really care about and that they're very passionate about. And the transformation in the confidence building that I have seen in a population of people who are extremely technically competent, but so disconnected from each other, has been phenomenal over the past 2 years. And I think that's exactly what we need to be focusing on to build the next generation of innovators.
Enforce clapping. Please clap. Okay, but what happens when you leave the Socratica event and you are trying to find a job or you're trying to build your company, or like what's the next step? Like, talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. So at the University of Waterloo, I'm sure many of you know, you have a co-op stream. And so alongside this unpaid volunteer work that hundreds of kids have been doing to build these communities for ourselves when we feel like we're missing something, we're constantly challenged to go find a job. And if anyone's been paying attention, it has not been the easiest environment to find an entry-level job recently. I think the pandemic came,
What
and
does that
then
look?
there was layoffs.
How is it?
And then...
These people might not know. What does that look like when it's not easy?
Okay. So examples include you recruit 6 months for an internship that is only 3 months long, and you drop out of the process because it's taking too long. And why are you still recruiting after 6 months if the internship itself is only 3 months? Or you secure an internship and you're going to start tomorrow and then you get laid off and you haven't even had the opportunity to try the internship or meet anybody. Maybe you have been laid off 3 times this year and your entire work week for the past year has been spent looking for jobs, applying to portals, getting a job finally, onboarding, and then getting laid off again, and then having the company that laid you off announce that they're hiring for the role you just got laid off for. That can't possibly be the most efficient, productive cycle. It just can't be, you know? And I think that what we really need to focus on is restoring the trust that young people have with the companies that they want to work for. We have a generation that's so excited to contribute and work on the problems that they care about. And a lot of them are sitting in this hiring, unemployed, onboarding cycle where they could be contributing that effort to anything productive, even if we changed the hiring process to include paid, meaningful work that could help a company as part of a trial period. And then from there, you make a hiring decision. There's just a lot of hours being spent on stuff that's not contributing value to anybody. And I think we could really reform this process to make it a better place for young people to kickstart their careers.
I think that's really cool. Beyond that, there was a framing here. Like, we kind of went early stage, scaling stage, OG, new G.
New G.
And there was like I think I don't mind a familial framing to the questions and conversations that we're having here, whether it's a town hall environment or that. I want to give you the chance to close off this conversation with a direct ask. How can we as a community be helping people like you that had to enter the periods of building that we all remember fondly, built our network with, like, remotely during COVID? How can we be helping you right now?
So I have 4 key audiences that I'd like to address.
Damn, okay.
Yeah, I made a list. So
Can you do that in like a 280 characters?
I can try to go really fast. My auctioneer moment. Firstly, I think the government actually really nailed it with housing being the #1 thing to support people with. I have so many friends who are unable to pursue anything entrepreneurial because they're so worried about putting a roof over their head. And I'm very fortunate to be supported by my family, by scholarships, and by co-ops as a software engineer. And still, I've been making decisions like moving to other provinces to save money on rent and living in living rooms and splitting weird apartment situations with friends of mine, because that is how much I'm able to pay. And if I can extend my runway to experiment and be an entrepreneur, I'm going to do that. And I think that that is a significant inhibitor to not just the majority of Canadians, but like 99% of young people right now. And it's definitely getting in our way, plus community. So I think the government is actually quite correct that housing is the issue for young people. Second, for companies, I think just focusing on that trust piece, making your hiring processes a little bit more efficient from a macro level in terms of net Canadian productivity, thinking about the number of times and the amount of confidence that is lost when people get laid off over and over again. And really trying to think about how can we upskill our existing people that we have hired so that maybe they got hired for something you no longer need, but instead of starting them at ground zero in the hiring process, you could consider other roles for them where they could be useful. For incubators, I think there's a huge role that can be played here, and accelerators. A lot of young people don't have the confidence to say, I have a company and I'm an entrepreneur, and fill out a long form saying they're like a Series A startup and they want to work out of your incubator. And I think the best thing we could do is to open the doors. So we would have an environment where if you've recently been laid off and you really want to work on something, you want to meaningfully build skills in this time where you can't find a job, you could find other people who felt the same and you could collaborate with each other. And then we'd have an ecosystem where people like angel investors, people who are recruiting for companies even, instead of having to review through portals of generic AI-generated cover letters, could show up and see the work that people are doing and see who is learning and growing and collaborative, and be directly scouting out of this active talent pool who, instead of being sitting at home alone, has been contributing value and learning through the process. I can see that being so beneficial to so many players in the industry. But it all starts with opening the doors. And also, for these senior entrepreneurs, people who have been part of the Canadian ecosystem for a while, maybe you'd show up to these accelerators. Maybe you, when you see events where young people are trying to get together and show off their work, trying to be social, you're showing up and you're getting to know us, and you're making the experience of building in Canada, not just joining a Zoom call that happens to be from north of the border, but actually getting to know the people that are here. Because if we can afford to live here, and if there's people that we know who are here, sorry, we'll want to stay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that.